doing? Yeah, I've been getting some interesting comments on my live streams. Some good, some bad. Fancy themselves to be right-wing conservatives. Why you would want to put yourself in a box like that, I don't know. I don't fancy myself to be anything other than who I am. However, there's a thought-provoking comment on one of my posts when I talked about abortion and how the abortion rights thought it was not a good thing. They supported segregation and Jim Crow laws. There were a lot of evangelicals, to be fair, who supported civil rights, mainly black evangelicals like Dr. Martin Luther King. However, a lot of the white evangelicals absolutely did not and resented quote-unquote northern interference in southern ways of living. But in the 1970s, things started changing. Civil rights became the law of the land, and if you wanted to keep a job or do anything, you had to you could not be an outright racist bigot, because naturally, if you're working in the workplace and you're a bigot and you hate certain types of people, then it interferes with the way you're going to do your job, because you have to give equal opportunity to everyone, regardless of race or religion or anything like that, gender. So anyway, it became extremely politically bad to be a bigot, to be a racist, to support segregation and things like that. So the evangelicals, who had been gaining a lot of political power, decided, well, let's find an issue that we can support. And in about 1980, because I have looked it up after the thought-provoking, apparently an evangelical got on and said, God loves everyone and you're wrong, and the evangelicals jumped on the abortion debate as soon as Roe versus Wade became the law of the land in 1973. I'm like, well, actually they waited till about 1980. Now, some evangelical Christians did and jump on it, but quite a few didn't. As a matter of fact, the Baptist Southern Convention came out in favor of abortion in certain cases, if you can believe that, before Roe versus Wade. And so, yeah, isn't that interesting? So, the backroom deals between Republicans and Southern Democrats took place, in the same back rooms where lynchings were planned. And the Republicans said, hey, you don't like civil rights? Well, we don't like civil rights either, because it interferes with the way we do business. So let's get together and you guys vote for Republicans. And the first time that strategy came into being was in 1964. And then the first national candidate that got elected was Richard Nixon in the late 60s, 1968, employing elements of that strategy. But the first time it really came into being was 1980. And if you remember, and this was what tells you that evangelicals came on board with the Republicans with the abortion debate. what happened in 1980? Well, it was an election year. Who was running for election? It was Ronald Reagan versus Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is very interesting because he is an evangelical Christian. But when he became president, evangelicals abandoned him. They didn't like him very much because he did a lot of things that were in favor of desegregation and civil rights, and that's a no-no. We don't like that. We don't like that in the South. After all, we are the Confederate States of America, and if you think I'm saying that jokingly, there are a lot of people down there who still think of themselves as Confederates. Fortunately, that stereotype of the South is changing, and there's a lot of people down there who are more open-minded than that. Actually, I really like the South because, if you can avoid some of those, some of the ignorant people down there, you'll find that there's a lot of wonderful places to live and a lot of open-minded people down there. And there's just as many bigots in the North. Where do you think Donald Trump came from? New York City, of course. So, but anyway, so the Republicans made a deal with the devil, and I wish I could be tongue-in-cheek about that, but they made a deal with the devil. The evangelicals made a deal with the devil too, because, to be honest with you, when religious organizations get involved in politics and vice versa, it sullies both the political structure and the churches. And so, eventually, and it's been seen, eventually somebody comes along who is not in line with the ideas and philosophies, but they still have to support him because he's on our team, and we are, after all, trying to make abortion illegal all across the land, and yada yada yada. And some people might say, well, what is your idea? What is your solution? Well, first off, if preachers preach from the pulpit politics, like they start telling their congregations how to vote, who to vote for, then they should lose their tax-exempt status and tax them. And take the polls out of the churches. Election day should either be a holiday or it should be done on a weekend, and election day should be done only in public buildings like schools, courthouses, things like that. Not in churches, because I went to vote in a church. It was a Baptist church, and we were witnessing the church use their church buses to pick up members of their congregation to bring them in to vote wholesale. I'm like, if they're willing to pick up everyone and do that, that's fine. But I can guarantee you they weren't. So there is a lot of corruption in that, both for the church and for politics, because now you're getting people who are so deeply ingrained with their crusader beliefs that they get into politics, and not only do they end up supporting somebody like Donald Trump, but they also believe that they're right no matter what, and that anybody who is against them is against God, and that they are doing God's work and God's will. And I don't believe that. I don't buy that. Let what is Caesar be unto Caesar's, and let what is God's be given to God. But about the abortion issue, I think we can diffuse the whole issue very quickly and very easily. I have noticed that when we are aiming the abortion debate, it is always aimed at women. Now, the last time I looked, women are not the ones who do all the all the things. They are not the ones forcing people into sexual relationships. They are not the ones who are being the Johns and going after prostitutes and things like that. It's always men, but we aim our ire and our lecturing to women. And I'm like, you know what? We need to stop that. We need to start talking to the men and saying, look, A, you produce a child, you need to be a father to that child. If you can't be a father to that child, don't produce children. Do what you have to. Get them a vasectomy or whatever. Be a responsible adult. There are too many men walking around who've produced children that they don't want to have anything to do with and they don't want to pay for. And, force the men to be responsible. If you don't want to be responsible, don't have children. If you have children and you're not responsible, then maybe you should work on a road crew or a chain gang, and all your money goes to help take care of the children. There's just way too many children, and I know this very, very well. Way too many children without decent parents. Children need to have their fathers in their lives. And stop picking on poor people. This again is it. This war that we have becomes a war on poor people, and worse, it becomes a war on poor women. Women who are single mothers, who, at a time when they weren't really capable of thinking, usually when they were young and they weren't capable of thinking straight, or they were brought up and not very well educated as young people, they produce children way too early because some man usually also has the same issue, but the man can run off and not be responsible, leaving a woman to have to take care of the children. So yeah, if the churches really want to get into it, they should say, hey, we've been talking to women about how we want to curtail their reproductive freedom, but we haven't ever mentioned it to men because we've had a boys will be boys attitude about it. And also, speaking of said churches, you want to cut down on the number of abortions that are taking place? There's a word for that. It's called adopt. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're really into it and you believe that life is precious, there are a lot of kids out there who need a good father and mother. And adopt, foster. Do whatever it takes to make sure that the pressure to do the wrong thing is taken out. Because now here we are, we're trying to deny people civil rights, and we're dressing it in the abortion issue, which everybody agree on abortion is bad, and wrapping it in a religious wrapper as well, and we're destroying not only freedom in this country, we're taking away people's civil rights, and we are not doing anything to curtail the number of abortions that are taking place. You think passing a law is going to do it? No, that's not going to do it. It's just going to make it to where we go back to the back alley abortions, or people will go out of country, or or whatever. It will happen one way or the other. The real way to go at it is to actually educate and make it not so desirable for people to want to go out and be irresponsible, and stop going after the women. Our mothers and daughters and sisters, it's like everything. We we make it hard for women to even live, and then we got to browbeat them over something that, yeah, they have control over it, I guess, and yeah, you can say that they shouldn't be irresponsible themselves, but I mean, look at the sex industry in itself. Who are the customers? Who's making it a multi-billion-dollar industry? It's generally women who are the ones who are providing the quote-unquote services in that industry, but it's men who are the customers. If there weren't any customers in it, you think if it was a small minority that are women doing it, that it would be a multi-billion-dollar industry, it would be going broke. But yeah, it makes sense. Let's lecture women about it. Let's lecture women about their bodies. Let's lecture women about taking away their rights and making it hard for them, because it makes us feel good and moral. And we are not very moral by doing that. We are just doing the easy route and turning it into political poison, which is destroying our country. And many of the people who are doing this have the wrong motivations to begin with, because as I've said, and I believe, this is not about abortion. It's not about unborn children. It's about civil rights. It's about hating other people. I mean, look at how much hate it brings out when we get involved in the abortion debate. I mean, we got people over here in Kansas and other places who are blowing up bombs in churches because of the abortion issue. I mean, there really isn't much of an issue. We have the way to figure it out, but we love to make it into an issue so we can drive a wedge and make it different between us and them, so we can have quote unquote the right wing versus the left wing, and liberal versus, and there's really not much difference between the two. Most people are moderate. Most people aren't that extremely concerned about abortion, and have a kind of a, it's up to the men to be responsible. If you produce a baby, be a father. And if you can't be a father, which is a horrible shame, because children need their real dads in their lives, trust me on that one, then at least be responsible and, work whatever you have to work to provide for your offspring. Oh, no. We would rather charge up the Capitol steps and declare a guy who's the exact opposite of a Christian as our dictator, and take America from a democracy into, we know where that's going, we know where it's gone, we can read history. And speaking of which, I don't want to go too much into any kind of research and talking about that, not because I can't do it, or I will say, I've limited for time. I have children that I'm taking care of, and I have responsibilities and a job. So I can't spend as much time on the internet as I want to researching or going into libraries or whatever, or finding original sources. But let's just say people have challenged me on my ideas, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do some research. So this may take me hours. Within 5 seconds, hitting the Wikipedia button, I find the information I need. So what is the problem? Don't do that. That is bullshit. If it is within 5 seconds, then you do the research. Don't support your opinion with lies. We're not doing that anymore. It's painfully obvious. You know, I thought it was going to be really, really hard and challenging to find this information. Nope. I found it within 5 seconds. Just hit Wikipedia. Generally, that'll do it. Snopes will do it. A lot of times you get an article, and these are topical subjects. I found it. I found what I needed. Yeah, evangelicals didn't really jump on board with the abortion debate until about 1980. That was, 1973 was Roe versus Wade. What did they wait for if it was a big deal? As a matter of fact, and I've said it already, the Southern Baptist Convention was in favor of abortion because they thought it was bad for mothers to have to give birth to children in cases of rape and incest, or children that were going to have horrible defects. Somebody I was telling that to nodded their head and agreed with me. He said, yeah, of course, because there were a lot of racists and they were practicing a form of eugenics, and of course we want to abort babies that aren't, quote unquote. But there it is. And I'm not going to say that of the Southern Baptist Convention. I'm going to say that at one time they made sense, and then, oh, well, we can't be against civil rights anymore. We got to change it up. Let's talk about abortion when we mean civil rights. And this way we can be against civil rights, but mask it in the abortion debate. And again, up until that time, it was considered a quote-unquote Catholic issue, and evangelicals and Catholics were not going to be in the same side of politics, in the 60s and 70s. Things have started to change since that time. So, yeah, it didn't even take me 5 seconds. It was one click away. And somebody's going to tell me all this stuff about they know that the evangelicals were against abortion as soon as Roe versus Wade. Well, I'll agree with you a little bit on that. I'll say that they were against it before Roe versus Wade. They knew what was coming, but not all evangelicals. Most of them weren't. Just some groups. And then after Roe versus Wade, they didn't just jump on board. Oh my God, we got to get this threat. People are going to take away the rights of unborn babies. And nope, not until 1980. Not until Ronald Wilson Reagan was running for president. And the Republicans were making a deal with the devil and going into the back rooms of all the small towns in the South and some small towns in the North and said, look, we hate civil rights too. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Vote for us. And, in these same back rooms where lynchings were planned. Vote for us, and let's break the solid South. Because, to be honest with you, after 1974, everybody knows what happened in 1974. The Republican Party was dying. Their presidential candidate, their president, had to leave office in shame because of Watergate and because of just outright lying and violating the law. So they had to reinvent themselves, and they reinvented themselves by no longer being the party of Lincoln and Prohibition, and now being the party of the Dixiecrat. And the Dixiecrats are the Democrats who supported the South in the Civil War, and the Democrats who were against civil rights in the 60s, very conservative. Another word for them is blue Democrats. Very, very conservative. And it's funny, too, because now we talk about red state, blue state. At one time, when we called a blue Democrat was a hardcore evangelical Christian conservative Democrat. And then you had the Northern Democrats, which is what the Democrats are now, the party of more left-wing, more into social programs. Of course, my friend, who's very jaded, points out to me, there's really no difference between the two parties. And I'm like, yeah, in some cases you're right. Democrats have voted for as many bloated Pentagon budgets as Republicans. Nothing ever changes there. You think things will be different under Biden? Nope. Not in that regard. But I will say that whenever I needed help on something, 9 times out of 10, the Democrats came to help the people versus the Republicans who were more into helping big business and things like that. I got to remember where I'm going. I'm not going up towards the Tiffany Springs up here. I'm going towards this little place up here for lunch. So I don't think this argument, this discussion, which is a great discussion, and I thank you guys for making comments, even if I disagree with them. Oops, it looks like they're closed. Roll. Let's see what it says here. No MSG. No open either.
Carry out available.
Open Tuesday, 1/26/2021. I wonder why they're closed. Sunday through Thursday, 11 to 9. It is definitely after 11, between 9, and it's Sunday. Don't know. They're closed today. Well, anyway, I got to figure this out, so I shall be signing off here. And again, I say thanks to all the people who have added to the conversation. And anyways, I got to go. Things are getting busy here, so woohoo.